Hello, everyone. I'm Madam Pamita, and I wanted to welcome you to our little Instagram live interview series that we'll be sharing on YouTube and TikTok, and it's called Meet My Familiar. And today we're going to be I'm going to be interviewing Cassandra Snow, and I'm super, super excited. And while we're waiting for them to get on here, I want to tell you a little bit about why I am doing this series and what this is all about. So I have a new book coming out from Hay House in January 2025 called The Witch's Guide to Animal Familiars. It is a comprehensive and super accessible book that gives you spells and tips and tricks and techniques, magical techniques for working with animals, whether they are very close relationships or whether they are wild animals in the world around us. So this beautiful, beautiful book is coming out in January, and to promote it and to get you guys to know that pre-orders are available now, and pre-orders are super helpful for authors. They really help a book get traction. And so I am offering one of my full moon workshops in January. They're usually $40. Anybody that pre-orders is going to get that $40 workshop for free. And the workshop is an introduction to working with animal familiars. So it works out perfectly. So if you'd like to take advantage of that, pre-order this book, get a free $40 workshop. All you have to do is go to animalfamiliars.com. You'll find out all about the book, places that you can pre-order, and then you'll sign up. And once you sign up, you will get that link so that you can join me for that workshop in January. So happy to see you over there. We'll also be offering some other bonuses later on. If you sign up now, you'll get all the bonuses, not just this bonus of the class. We're going to have some giveaways, a party, all kinds of fun things. So if you want to get in on those things, pre-order now. Go to animalfamiliars.com and pre-order. So so I see Cassandra's here. They're here. We're ready to go. Let me get you in here. And talking about their familiar Sebastian. Cassandra Snow is the author of Queering the Tarot, Queering Your Craft, and the co-author of Lessons from the Empress with Siri Vincent Plouff. Am I saying it all right?
I believe it is Plouff.
Plouff. Okay. Their latest project is an essay anthology they curated and edited for Weiser Books called The Tarot and Other Words, coming out in May of 2025. In addition to writing, Cassandra is a lifelong theater artist, tarot reader, and lover of all things magic, occultism, and creativity. You are my people,
Yeah,
100%.
thank you. Yes, I was so excited about this.
Oh my gosh. This is like the perfect, this perfect meeting and convergence of all these things: tarot, magic, animals. I mean, I love it. So want to tell us a little bit about Sebastian and give us a flavor of what that relationship with Sebastian was like?
I do. So I loved this cat. I still do. He has left this plane, but I wanted to talk specifically about Sebastian because I have another cat who often shows himself for magical workings and things like that, but who's still with me. But I wanted to talk about Sebastian because it's like our relationship was an amalgam of a number of things. I graduated college in, I want to say 2009, and within a week, I saw that someone was getting rid of a cat, and I was a little horrified because they had like released them to the street, and I was like, I would have taken that cat. And then she felt bad and was like, okay, I'll see if I can get him again. And so he found his way to me within really a week of my adult life. And he lived and he was a couple years old at that point. And early on in that relationship, I grew up with a lot of pets. My mom was always bringing animals into the house, and they didn't always last or they'd get rehomed, but I grew up with tons and tons of animals. And so, but I still had a few pets growing up that were like my pets. And that was still like nothing compared to what I felt the second I looked at Sebastian. I just like that was my soul animal, like my soul friend. And graduating from college, once I got out sort of into the real world, I started having really incapacitating, what we now know to be PTSD and CPTSD symptoms. And it's like my first month in adulthood, and I'm having a lot of trouble even like showing up to jobs and things like that because of it. And so it was really tough. But then my queer platonic partner said, well, you and Sebastian have a really strong connection. What if we train him to like wake you up when you're having nightmares and to like calm you down if you're having a panic attack? So it started really that way. It started with him being more of an emotional support and really an ESA. And I would argue an actual service animal since there were specific tasks he was doing, but I never had him officially like registered or trained for that. Um, but and in fact, when my symptoms would eventually reduce, if I had any dreams at all, he would still bop me awake because I sleep light. So it actually became a problem later, but it was also cute. And what if I did have a nightmare again? So I still let him do it. Um,
I wanted to say maybe he was helping you to remember your dreams or to be like to have maybe some lucid dreams. Maybe it
yeah,
wasn't that, and it's
something like
annoying.
that. Yeah. And so, and then in the background of all of that, since I started college, since I was 18, I'd been dabbling and practicing in witchcraft. And then my last 2 years, when I had moved to the Midwest, I was like, I just kind of buckled down on it. I really wanted something to focus on that wasn't just school and wasn't just theater because I felt like being so singular minded was like ironically impacting my ability to do the work of theater and school. And so I really, really dove into my spirituality then. And so when I got Sebastian, at first I was a little cautious, but then he started sitting in on all of my spells and he started like the ones that ended up being the most successful, he would get like excited or just start purring really loud. And so it almost became like a sign that I was on the right track magically, which was really, really lovely.
Amazing.
Yeah. As opposed to other times when maybe a spell would be less successful, or if I was just trying a method out to see if it worked for me, he would literally just sit there and look at me like, okay, I guess that's what we're doing today. Um, and so, yeah, he was great. And then he worked with me in a lot of capacities. He was also very protective, and I think that that was probably true spiritually as well. Um, and I will say he was the world's worst mouser, but other than that, he was very protective. He would like back the mouse into a corner if one got into our apartment, but then just look at me like, okay, you deal with
Exactly.
it.
I'm letting you have a chance, a shot
Right.
at it, and you're not doing anything.
So yeah. And so last December, me and my queer platonic partner ended up having to put him down, though he was quite old at that point. Um, and I kind of knew that that wouldn't be the end of our relationship. I've definitely since then I felt him as like closer to a spirit familiar when I do workings, or I've even seen him in um spirit flight or things like that. And then I also really still think he is here protecting me. And my other cat, who did not get along with him, will just get randomly like angsty sometimes. And I'm like, you were fighting with your brother again, weren't you? And I just can't see it. But this is so everyone, my dad had this really beautiful portrait of him made for me. So
Oh
this was him.
my
It's
gosh.
a painting. You really can't tell from the me
No,
showing it,
oh my
but
gosh, that's amazing. It's
yeah, it's
gorgeous.
really beautiful, screen printed. Or no, not screen painted. I can actually like touch the oil brush marks,
Oh
but
my gosh.
yeah, so that's sort of where we are now. I will say I live in an apartment building where a few animals have passed and have mostly stuck around, including my downstairs neighbor's dog, who was also very elderly. And I really, and this is nothing I've seen or experienced, but it's just like the intuitive feeling that like Sebastian is also kind of keeping the peace between the other animal spirits in the house. like we're not going to let things get wild now
Yeah.
just because I'm gone. So,
It's almost like he probably had that role in life in some way as like the kind of maybe the one that was keeping everybody in line.
yeah,
And then he says, I'm not going to stop doing that. I'm going to keep
yeah,
doing that. Amazing. I always ask, one of the things I always ask people is how they met their familiar, because I also think that, um, in my practice and also in the book, I talk about familiars kind of showing up in unique ways. They don't, I don't often have the experience myself, or see when I talk to magical practitioners about their familiars, I don't often hear a story of like, yes, I decided to go to this breeder and buy this particular, it seems there's something more serendipitous about it, or just more like random about the way that we meet them, and the
yeah.
story that you have is absolutely reflects that as well. Can you talk a little bit about you've talked about the ways that he contributed to your spell work and your magic. Is there something that you can think back on, a particular spell, or would he also get involved in your tarot or just in your spell work?
It was primarily my spell work, interestingly enough. I will say him and my other cat, my current cat, really like to just like lay all over the tarot cards, but I don't necessarily find that helpful.
No.
And it feels more like when they sit on your laptop or something, like, oh, hey, pay attention to me, not work.
Yes.
And so it's more like that. At the same time, when I was seeing clients in my home, if they weren't allergic, I would let the cats kind of come and go, but Sebastian would usually sit in there with us. And that did seem to be more of his like unofficial ESA training. Like if tougher stuff came up, he would get a little sweeter and cuddly with clients and stuff. So I think he was largely just like a very empathetic cat, and that translated to other things as well.
My gosh. Yeah, this also reflects something that I have, the wonderful thing about this book for me personally is that I get to talk about familiars to people and find
Mhm.
out and confirm things, like when you've done something in your magic and you're like, was that a fluke? What the
Yeah.
heck? Am I the only one that, and then you talk to someone else and they have the same experience. It's so affirming, right? To
Yeah.
do that. And so I think of, like I have two cats, one who is absolutely a familiar, and the other one, I think of her, maybe she's a familiar too, but her specialty is healing magic. She comes when I'm anxious and upset and just lies on my chest and
Mhm.
purrs. When I'm sick, she lies on me. And she's my cuddler. She's my like she hangs out with me. She loves to be with me. She's like my little baby,
Yeah.
but she's not interested in my magic. Right? And you saying, and you're confirming, like it's not every spiritual thing that we do that necessarily is their jam. And if Sebastian's like hanging out when you're casting spells, then not particularly interested when you're doing tarot. It's like they have a preference,
Oh, yeah.
right?
Well, they have a preference, and it's like they know their own strengths. And so I think that's a lot of it too. My other cat, Sir Didymus, is such a sweetheart. He is the most orange boy that ever orange boyed. But he's anxious. He's an anxious cat. He was also a street cat that we sort of rescued. Um, but he was more deeply affected, I think, which granted, I think he'd been on the street longer, but he when I sometimes if I'm doing really intense spell work, if I'm working with, I work a lot with Hecate, if I'm, or, and my partner works a lot with the Morrigan. So like when we're working with those deities, he'll honestly seem kind of almost a little scared. Um, and then sometimes he'll feel kind of like shaky throughout the night. And so Sardinimus is definitely not necessarily about the spell work, but he is similar to, like you said, your other cat. He's the cuddler, he's the lover, and then I also think cats that aren't that smart just brighten your day by doing stupid things.
Absolutely. We wouldn't be watching millions and millions of cat videos every day if it weren't
Right.
if
Yeah.
it weren't absolutely joyful and funny and hilarious. So those cats that are goofballs are certainly healers in another way, right? To
Yeah,
think of,
very
right?
much so.
Yeah, this is so interesting to me, and to discover that that's not only my experience but other people's experience as well. That sort of, we invite. I think we can invite them to come into our magic, absolutely, or be open to that. But they're going to either come or not come,
Yeah.
depending on their specialty, what they can do, what they're interested in doing, right?
Yeah.
And I often say that it's not like it doesn't negate any experience. I mean, I talk about all different kinds of experiences of connecting with animals that aren't necessarily the familiar experience. Of course, the emphasis is that deeper connection in this book, but all kinds of ways that you can do magic, even if you are, you have a companion animal versus, and there's nothing lesser about that. I
Oh
think of,
no.
right, we have friends that are non-magical friends, and I mean most of us do have non-magical friends and magical friends, and our non-magical friends we can have wonderful, loving, close, fulfilling relationships with people who are not participating in magic as well. They serve another purpose, and same with our animals. So
Oh
absolutely
yeah.
true. Yeah. Um, if you were like to talk about, are there any
Oh, we have a visitor.
oh, look at you. Hello. Hello.
Hi, hi, buddy.
Oh my gosh, we get to see him in the flesh. So, with him, now tell me his name again. It's a long name and I can't
Sir
remember.
Didymus.
Or did miss. Has he shown any kind of inclination to any magical things, or just entertaining you?
Mostly entertainment. Like I said, he actually gets a little nervous during a lot of really intense magical
Yeah.
workings. Um, and he's just a nervous cat. I think it's like the heightened energy that
I just love
affects
that he's here
him.
right in the camera. This is making my day.
I also had a party last night and he was like equally obsessed and terrified by so many people being here. And it was like a lot of his favorite people, so he was like, it's too much. I don't know who to go to."
Oh,
Um,
he is so
so
gorgeous,
he
by the
is.
way. Oh my
Yeah.
gosh.
They're both
Oh my God.
beautiful, beautiful
Oh
boys.
my gosh, what a cutie. Oh, I love
Yeah.
him. I love his energy. So sweet. Um, Thinking about like people that are bringing, animals into their practice. Do you have tips, tricks, ideas, beliefs, or anything that you would share about that?
Yeah, I think consent in general in magic is a really big thing for me. It's something that I really strive for in all of my spiritual relationships as well. And with animals, obviously, they can't give like verbal consent, but it also like if I think an animal wants to be in the room for a working, but like Sir Didymus gets a little bit anxious, I'm like, oh, maybe not. And so we'll like remove him from the space. So I think just being very in tune with their own limits and the ways that animals give us consent sometimes and things like that is really important. Um, and then obviously, like there's the basic safety things, like if I'm using anything that could be toxic or poison to cats, even if it's like very good for people, I try to keep them away from it. Including like a lot of essential oil and stuff like that, even if the plant is fine, cats are still a little too sensitive to that
Mhm.
sometimes. And like I've seen too many horror stories about diffusers on the internet, so we don't even have those in my house. Um, so yeah, I think things like that. For me, it is primarily about like, is this animal enjoying this and are they safe? Those are my big ones. Um, yeah. And I noticed my animals tend to be very strong-minded. Um, and so those signals are usually pretty clear, but I do think that I would recommend having a lot of experience with animals in general before diving into any kind of familiar work or spirit work with animals. because if I hadn't been raised with a bunch of pets and if I hadn't just been an animal person who like volunteered at zoos and animal hospitals and stuff, like I don't know that Sebastian would have taken to magic quite so well. So,
Yeah, that's absolutely true. I talk about this in the book and I say you can learn, like, for example, communication on a very rational scientific level
yeah.
to enhance that relationship. So like about, of course you have cats, so you know about the slow blink, right? The slow blink,
Yeah.
which is, if for those of you who don't have cats or maybe aren't, haven't been alerted to this, cats will, they don't smile with their mouth, they smile by slow blinking at you. And this is their way. I always think of it as like, oh, my cats are saying I love you, and I slow
Mhm.
blink back at them. It's so delightful, and you can communicate with them in the same way they communicate with you. A smile to them is you showing your teeth. It may not be received by especially a nervous cat so well. So you doing the slow blink and learning things like that and those kinds of techniques, which are non-magical. This is just, getting to know and connecting with your animal in a way and speaking their language, right? This is what that's about.
Yeah.
Yeah, so this is like those kinds of things, and learning how as you have. I think one of the wonderful things that you said is the idea of consent with animals as well when we're working with them. We cannot. This is what I object to in some beliefs around familiars, and particularly having an animal familiar, is that it's your minion there to do your bidding. This is the crappy propaganda from the Hammer of Witches. This is some
Yeah.
pervy dude coming up with something, but is it completely made up? Actually, I think my theory is that in a time and a era and a culture where having a pet was seen as either you were a rich person who could afford that, to have that weird relationship, and any relationship with animals that weren't dominating, which was what biblical, the Bible says you're going to have, be dominating all the animals on the earth as a human. If you looked at a more cooperative relationship with animals, you were suspect. If you were talking to your animal, being kind to an animal, and you weren't abusing an animal, you were seen, it would as another reason that you would be suspect and you could be accused of witchcraft. So they
Yeah.
they went off on this thing with like, this is a demon, an animal is a demon, that's a minion that you're sending out to steal the milk from your neighbor, and on we go. So this kindness and connection with the animal kingdom, which goes back to pagan times and prehistoric times. If we look at the human relationship with animals in prehistoric times, where we were so interdependent, that's what we're looking at. So my theory there, but this is what you said, is like this idea of consent, that the familiar is not coming, you're not dominating and making an animal be a familiar. It's the familiar itself has the desire to lend its energy to your magic
Yeah.
practice. Yeah.
Very much so. And if anything, I sometimes felt like Sebastian was like getting me to do things. Like I didn't always feel like it was
You were
um
his minion? Is that
yes,
what you're telling me? Well, I
yes,
think that's cat owners in general. We all know we're the willing servants of the
yeah,
furry masters.
yeah. So it's that. I do think your theory is so right. And I've always just assumed watching a lot, because even from a very young age I was very, very into all movies, books, everything with like witches, no matter how over the top or silly it was. And I always had just kind of assumed when I got into witchcraft that they just combined a bunch of ideas into one. And so like the idea of like servitors or something like that, they
Yeah.
would just like combine stuff like that with things like familiars and decide that it was easier to just make those the same
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
um
Yeah. Exactly. And this idea, I mean, I don't go into that, like conjuring demons or any of that stuff. It's not my jam anyway. But that idea that a close and connected and magical relationship did exist,
Oh yeah.
but that's not what's in the Hammer of Witches. That's a pervy dude's fantasy, of that.
Yeah,
you know
very much so.
yeah. Well, so are there any things that you have coming up that you want to promote? You got new things going on? What's going on in your world that you can share with everyone?
Yeah, quite a bit. So in my professional tarot and writing life, I have that book from Weiser coming out in May 2025. I'm so excited about it. Siri is in it, who co-wrote Lessons from the Empress with me. Azali Earthwork is in it, Taylor Ursula, Charlie Claire Burgess. It's Meg Jones Wall. It's just like super, super stacked. And the stuff people turned into me was unreal. I was like, I'm gonna be the worst essays in my own book I'm compiling, and that's fine. I'm fine with it.
I think your work writing is amazing. So your worst
Thank
is
you.
is better than many, many, many people's best. So let's
Thank
just say
you.
that.
Um, yeah, so that's coming up, and then I've recently relaunched, but only for a short time, my offering, which is called Tarot Study Hall, which is essentially like a study workspace in it. I do use like educational foundations, like the same way if I'm teaching a full class, like I set my goals of what I want people to learn or take away. And then I plan the activities and spreads and stuff around that. But it is largely like I'm wanting people to learn through their own experience and experiences with the cards. And so I'm just designing the activities to fit those learning goals. All of that to say, I have one of those. I ended the first session of that right before we got on, and then next month on the third Sunday in December, whatever that date is, from 12 to 2 p.m. CST, I will be leading another one that will be focused on what the cards have to tell you about slowing down when the world says you don't have time. um, because I think, especially with everything going on in the world right now, remembering our commitments to like taking care of ourselves, taking care of the earth, taking care of our communities. And for me, in a lot of ways, that means moving slower and living slower. Um, and so I think tarot is a really good ally to help us with that. And I also think that living slower is like an antithesis to a super consumer, high driven, over the top capitalist society.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
saying we're not going to do that. We're going to take our time and enjoy ourselves instead and be there for each other in a really substantial way, is like a really powerful act of personal rebellion against the system. So, and then for that, it'll be like a nice calming space, even though it is rooted in this very radical politic. Um, and then I'll have another one of those in January, which will be about like using your cards to set intention for the year and stuff. So that's exciting. Um, in my personal life, my best friend is acting as my surrogate right now. So in early February, I will have a baby. I am beyond excited about that. That also means in February, March, I will be doing as little as humanly possible.
That is going to say
um,
that'll slow you down a lot.
mhm. And
Yes.
yeah, and so I'm so excited, and I'm also excited to just, I mean, I have to save up so much and I feel behind on it, but because it's a huge privilege to be able to take a month off, and it's also one that I only kind of have and need to really save up for. Um, and so, but I'm just so, so excited. But I'm coming out of that parental leave because I am speaking at Paganicon this year, and I am doing a talk on using tarot as a jumping off point for finding your spirituality. Um, because I think the theme this year is spiritual pathways or something like that. And I was like, I just want to talk about how tarot was that for
Yeah.
me and still often is that. So, because I got into tarot before I got into witchcraft, and it's sort of what opened those doors for me. And it's also what made it seem not as, because I was raised evangelical in the South. And so I think without having tarot first and kind of easing in, it would have been too scary of a proposition for me to just dive into witchcraft. But the cards really helped me. And so I want to help other people find their path too, even if it's very different than mine. And hopefully a lot of people's will be. But also Paganicon this year, one of the notable speakers is Mara Starling, who I'm a huge, huge fan
Love
of. So
Mara.
I was like,
Yeah.
I'm like so beside myself excited. Um, so yeah, I think that's the big stuff I have going on. I'm also a theater artist, improviser, etc., but I don't really have much going on right now, which is fine. I mean, I'm like intentionally slowing down until for a little bit. But I just finished a higher level improv class and I'm excited to eventually hit the stage again. I just haven't found the
Yay.
right opportunity. Yeah.
Ah. Where can everybody find you to find out about the workshop, to find out
Yeah.
about, to find out about your other offerings and your book and all the things? Where can they find you?
Yeah, I'm also open for readings, and that's kind of an ongoing thing until February when I'm taking some time off. But all of that can be found at cassandra-snow.com. You'll see links there there's a page called Special Stuff, which is like the tarot study halls, and then email readings you can get that are slightly discounted from like a standard 20-minute Zoom or email reading from me. Um, yeah, and so that's cassandra-snow.com or following me here on Instagram. I am on most social media as Mix Cassandra Snow, same as Instagram, so it's
Mm.
MX Cassandra Snow. Um, Instagram threads have the dots, like mix.cassandra.snow. Blue Sky does not because it told me that that wasn't a valid screen name. So,
Maybe because of the
um,
dot. Maybe they don't allow the dot in there.
yeah,
I guess.
that's what I'm
Yeah.
thinking. So it's just Mix Cassandra Snow there. But Blue Sky is also just very fun and silly and like weird vibes, which I am here
Yeah,
for.
it seems like all the witches are going over to Blue Sky. I have a Blue Sky account at too, and I'm like, oh, it's just witch stuff shown in my feed, but like not, I'm gonna say this is very not like BS performative
Hmm.
witch stuff. It's real witch stuff. You know what I mean?
Oh
It's
yeah.
not cosplay witching, which is
Yes.
that's fine. It's just not what I'm
Yeah.
interested in. So
Same.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I love it. Blue Sky may be a nice, peaceful place for us to feel empowered and also have just nice things. Like we can have nice things again for a minute on social media.
Until
So
some guy comes along
I
and ruins it.
I know. Well, Instagram used to be that back before it was bought by Meta. It was such a great place. Now I'm kind of like, yeah, but I'm still here, still doing things on it. But yeah,
And it's still
the
like,
good old days, man.
well, and it's hard because Instagram has so many problems now, and I completely understand and agree why people are getting off of it. And at the same time, like, in terms of usability, and if I just want to waste time scrolling, like, it's still my favorite
Yeah.
of the social media. So that's also hard. And like,
I just wish it
it's,
didn't have so many damn ads. Ads and the policing is so inconsistent. It's like whatever.
yeah,
I'm just like
agreed.
whatever. Anyway, Cassandra, thank you so much for joining us today and for taking time out of your busy schedule to join and to talk about what you've got coming up and about your beautiful familiar Sebastian and your gorgeous kitty that's here and how this is such a magical thing and how animals and our magic are so
There's,
wonderful. Yeah.
yeah. Well, thank you so, so much for having me. I've been a huge fan of yours for a long time. So this is really
Likewise.
excited. Yeah, this was so exciting. Thank you so
Yeah,
much.
yeah. And I hope we get to see each other IRL soon at some conference somewhere. Maybe I'll come to Paganicon. I did love Paganicon when I was there 2 years ago. I think it was 2 years ago.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was so fun. So I might have to
yeah,
make the trek out into cold Minneapolis.
yeah, yeah. Well,
It's
and it's at the end of March, so it won't be as bad, but it also will not be what you're probably used
it
to
was
for
six
spring.
it was 6 degrees when we went 2 years ago.
Oh,
So we're from California and we're like, no, I have to drive on ice with what am I doing here? I don't even know what to do. But we made it. We're alive. We're still here. So I think I can do it again. Thank you so much. Have a beautiful rest of your day. Thank you guys so much for watching and hanging out. This will be a lot live on YouTube and on TikTok, but YouTube is a great place because it'll stay there forever.
Yes.
Um, yes, and so thank you again so much, and I look forward to seeing you soon. And I look forward to your book. I can't wait for that book. I'm going to go pre-order right now.
Yes, do it.
Uh,
Thank you so much. Have a
uh,
great rest of your day,
you too.
everyone.
Bye.
Bye.